chapter 11. This is another one that gets dicey. Okay, yeah, I might even share a personal story. All right, so chapter 11, 1 Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 1 is still imitate me just as I also imitate Christ. Okay, verse, that was from the other thing, it's connected, but okay. Again, these chapter breaks are man-made, not actually in the Bible. Okay, now, verse 2. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions just as I delivered them to you. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, the head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. Okay, so, all right, let me park the car and talk a little while here. So, now, first of all, ultimately, we're all under God. And, this goes back to the whole thing with Adam and Eve in the garden, and it's very deep. But, take a person who's a single woman, we're not under men in that sense. Now, if we're talking about overseers in a real church setting and you place yourself under their care, that's another thing. But if you have a caring parent or a family member who cares for you, that's another thing. But if you're like me and you don't have anybody, like you're not married, you don't have anybody, don't go putting yourself under men, because that's not what that means. All right. Anyway, we're all under God in a spiritual way, but so now, and then this thing about the head covering, I find this interesting. Like, the men were not supposed to have a head covering when they prayed, or publicly, I guess, I don't know. And it's interesting when you look at different cultures today, including in Israel, you see those, the little round hats that the men will wear. So I don't know if this was a tradition before and then it changed, but he starts referring to a lot of things that they did this all over in the Middle East. This was not a Muslim thing with the head covering for women. This was what they did all over the Middle East, or many of them at least, and it was just the custom that women would wear. And so that's all it was. And you see this reflected in, I mentioned this earlier, like the nativity scene always has Mary with a head covering, and that's where we get the bridal veil from. It's a head covering. Okay, so it was just a tradition and a custom in that part of the world way back. This goes way back to, they mention it with Rebecca, just way, way back. So it was just what they all did over there. It had nothing to do with a particular religion or not. Okay, so it was just a custom in the culture. So, yeah. All right. Verse 5. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is one and the same as if her head were shaved. Okay, so it was the reverse for women. They were supposed to have a head covering, especially if they prayed or prophesied. And I'm assuming that's in public, but it doesn't say. Okay. 6. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn, which is like you shaved your head. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. Again, this goes back to the Garden of Eden, all of this. For man is not from woman, but woman from man. Okay, again, that's the Garden of Eden. Nor was man created for the woman, but woman for the man. but she was created second. Okay, so 10. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Okay, 11. Nevertheless, neither is man independent of woman, nor woman independent of man in the Lord. For as woman came from man, even so man also comes through woman, but all things are from God. Okay, so ultimately everything's from God, and we kind of come from each other and need each other. So, and the head covering thing is just related to this in certain ways, and so all this stuff going back to the Garden of Eden, and I'm not going to read that whole story now, but it relates back to that whole thing with Adam and Eve. Okay, so it's kind of deep, it's kind of complex. There's spiritual dynamics here too, and a lot of people don't understand it, and they think it doesn't apply today, and because we have different culture and customs in the West and so on. But it doesn't give an exception for those things, so it's in here, and that's all we can do about it. So there's another thing here. Okay, 13. Judge among yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? I'm thinking it's like really long in that case. 15. But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. But if anyone seems to be contentious, we have no such custom, nor do the churches of God. Okay, so now just a few things about this. One is that it does mention, women praying and prophesying. Okay, so, and they did this in the church setting as well. So we have a perfect example of women speaking in the church. And that refutes an idea that other people have that that's somehow not okay, which again would contradict all this other stuff in the Bible where, women are supposed to speak, because how else can you use your gift? Okay, and they were all supposed to exercise their gift in a church setting, and many of these gifts involved speaking, word of knowledge, word of wisdom, tongues, prophecy, interpretation. All of these were speaking gifts. So, and they exercised them in the church setting. So, of course, they're allowed to speak, but it was just like anything else would contradict that, and that was misinterpreted. And I'll get to that when I get to that. But okay, so just want to make that point. I made a note of that for when I get to that. Now, another thing here, a lot of people like to try to say that, oh, well, see, her hair is her covering. That's what's given to her. No, because up here it says, like, if she doesn't have an extra covering on top of her hair, not just the head, but the hair, then she was supposed to shave off her hair. Okay, so that was obviously not the covering if she was going to shave it all off, or cut it really, really short. The covering was an extra head covering on top of the hair as well as the head. So that argument didn't fly, Okay, so just making that point because it says it all up there and down there. All right, and then here, and I have some samples I'm going to show, but first of all here, but if anyone seems to be contentious, we have no other custom, no such custom, nor do the churches of God. So if people were disagreeing with this, they were being contentious, okay? He was saying that all the churches were doing this, all right? So I know in the church today, we don't really see that, but there was a transitional period because there was a time, I think it was in the 50s, I'm not sure, but women used to wear these hats, and they were big, elaborate hats they wore in churches, and I think that was like their head covering. It wasn't a veil, it was a head covering of a hat form, and then it kind of slowly drifted away, but we don't have any green light for that here. So again, I'm just saying what it says, and I will go on with this in just a second, but I'm just going to show some samples of different kinds of head coverings that can be worn. Now, this one is more of just a big, longer one, but it wouldn't all show up here. I'm not going to take the phone out of this thing. It takes too much time and trouble to get it back in and out. But here is one of them that's just, it's one of those, it could be a scarf, but this is one of these lovely types of veils. It's sticking. Okay, so it can be any color. I know you can't see the whole thing, but anyway, so this is one of the things to wear that I wear sometimes. I'm not in a home church right now, otherwise, But okay, and then here is one. This is a smaller one, and it's just, I made this. It's lace. I didn't make the lace, but it's kind of an oval shape, and it has a cross in the back. So I just wanted to, make sure it was pronounced it. I'm doing this as a Christian. And yeah, so there's this one. It's smaller, it's just a little thing that you put over your head. And then I have another one like it. Similar, it's the same type of lace. And it's about the same size. But this one, it kind of ends here like in a corner. And it falls really nice on your head this way, which is why I designed this one that way. And I just attached this extra bit of lace to the end. So that goes all the way around. And then, of course, there's another kind of a corner there. And it falls really nice around your head that way. And then for people who want to be a little bit more inconspicuous, you can just take a handkerchief if you want to honor this Bible verse or chapter. Take a handkerchief and, open it up all the way and then kind of fold it in a triangle. And you can even fold it up a little more and then just put that over, and so I see that a lot. And you can even just have they have some of these headbands that are fat and different materials and things. So, it's a covering, right? So if you want to be a little less conspicuous, or you're shy about this, at least at the beginning, that's an option you can do. So there are different possibilities here. So I'm just wanting to point that out. Okay, that's end of my little show and tell. Now, okay, I was over here at 17. All right. Oh, and the story. I got to share the story. So I was at one church once, and down where I lived before, and I noticed nobody in any churches was doing this, so I would just do it the more inconspicuous way because I didn't want to stand out, And the other way I did it at home. So anyway, and this one church I was at, the pastor there, actually, he covered this part of the Bible, and he actually did talk about it in the way I just talked about it. Like, well, it's in the Bible, and we can't just write it off as a cultural thing because then they'll try to do that with all kinds of stuff, and it would be wrong, And I agreed with him, and I thought, well, I kind of took that as a green light, and I didn't know. I thought the next Sunday maybe a lot of women will be in one, right? So I got that one, not the big one, but I got the kind of medium one, it just goes over your head and that's it. And I had little hairpins to keep it in with a cross in the back. And so I wore that. And yeah, sure enough, I was the only one. But okay, fine, But if as if that wasn't bad enough, then I start getting the evil eye from all these ladies. And it was like, oh, really? Okay, well, he just said, not only did he say it was okay, but he recommended it because that's what the Bible says. And here I am doing it, actually doing it, and I was the only one. They were not obeying that. And they were giving me dirty looks. And I remember, I'll never forget this. Like, I had it, and I still wore it. Like, every Sunday, I just wore it. I thought, well, I'm not going to let them bully me out of it. I just did it to honor the Lord, and they can like it or not. So, like that saying goes, I'm not sorry that I'm not sorry. So anyway, and then they had this where they took communion, and they would walk up to the front to these tables, and I would come up for that. And there was they had a worship team on stage, and there was one lady in particular who was all the way over at the side where the table was that I was coming up to, because I usually sat at that end of the church. Every time, I'm not kidding you, I came up there and she was up there, and she just looked at me, and it was as if, her eyes were burning holes in me, just this look of total, like, just despising me for doing this. And I just couldn't believe it, that I ignored her. But I thought that there's that much hatred, for something the Bible actually says to do. Okay, now I wasn't shunning anyone or giving them an evil eye or acting, like you need to be doing this and I'm doing it, you're not. I wasn't doing anything of the sort. I was just really like trying to be as inconspicuous and about it. I was humble about it, everything. And, and here you have this woman acting like this, and she was in the worship team. Yeah. And it's just one small example of the things I've seen over the years, but it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there is something more going on here, something deeper in a spiritual way, on a spiritual level. And I thought, wow, and to me, I mean, this thing, I see beauty in this that many people don't see, like the fact that this is where we got the wedding veil from. Well, to me, I look at this sort of as like a wedding veil. We're the bride of Christ, and we should have a beautiful wedding veil, right? So as a woman, that's something we can enjoy. The men are part of this just as much, but I'm just saying, like, they're blessings as a woman, and I'm going to enjoy that. So anyway, it's just, I think of it that way. And then in the Bible, there's this whole concept of, the covering, like the atonement. The man was a covering for the woman in a way. So it all ties in together, and there is a spiritual dynamic to all of that. And that's, what I look at this as, and I engage in it in that way. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's sad that people want to disparage that. So anyway, again, I'm not trying to say, oh, thou must do this, or thou shalt be condemned, or any kind of, some people claim, oh, that's legalism. No, it's in the Bible. But, I'm not trying to browbeat anybody that you need to be doing this, but it's just something that, you reach a certain level of maturity, and you're just led to do certain things that you weren't when you were a newer Christian. So we need to be growing, and that's part of it. So okay, anyway, that's the end of the story. Now, oh, and I did stay there a while, and then it just got to be so hostile and bad. I just left that church and started looking for another one. So I had been to a lot down there for different reasons. I just, was all over the place. But okay, so moving on now with this. So verse 17. Now, in giving these instructions, I do not praise you, since you come together not for the better, but for the worse. For first of all, when you come together as a church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and in part I believe it. For there must also be factions among you, that those who are approved may be recognized among you. So, I mean, here, it's just a natural, basically, fallout of how this is going to appear. Almost like, those magnetic filings that fall along different poles, and they just organize themselves in a certain way based on the magnetic field. Well, in any group, you'll obviously see the ones that are more submitted to God and the ones who are not. And there'll be a kind of an invisible division there, but it's there. There's a line in the spirit realm that's there. That's a division that's just going to naturally fall into place based on where people fall in that magnetic field of the spirit world. So he's kind of referencing that. Okay, so the others, the ones that are approved, will be recognized. That's just automatically what happens. And the others are not in that group. So anyway, verse 20, therefore, when you come together in one place, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in eating each one takes his own supper ahead of others, and one is hungry and another is drunk. Okay, so they were coming together in their church meeting and having communion. Instead of doing it in an honorable and reverent way, they were kind of turning it into a every man for himself, fighting over a piece of meat kind of a feast, and that was of the flesh, and it was a disgrace to, the communion table or communion itself, that what it represents, what you're doing, so and he says, some are grabbing the food ahead of others, and some are hungry, and somebody's drunk, and so, they're not waiting for one another and all that. 22, what? Do you not have houses to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God and shame those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you in this? I do not praise you. Okay, so, it was not supposed to be, okay, we're hungry, now we're going to eat a meal. This was symbolic of the body and blood of Christ. So it needed to have reverence, and they didn't have that. And he's chastising them over that. Okay, 23. For I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Okay, so that's what it's supposed to symbolize, and it's a holy thing, and it is symbolic, okay, because when he said this is my body, his actual body was intact as he was saying this. So, the bread was symbolic of his body and what was going to happen. His body was broken for us, okay, and we do it in remembrance of him. We're remembering what happened. We're not, partaking of the actual body or blood, okay. It's in remembrance, which is commemorating. It's representing, it's symbolic, okay, so that's it. Now, 25, in the same manner he also took the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. This do as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. Okay, so we see the same thing here about in remembrance. It's symbolic of the blood, and it's the new covenant. He established a new covenant, okay, that does away with the old one. And the crucifixion was like what instituted this, and the Last Supper happened right before that. So the new covenant is all of that, okay, and that's what we're under now. And we celebrate this all when we celebrate communion. All right, so and then as often as you drink it almost sounds like that's the only legitimate way in which to drink wine, which it was wine, by the way, but it's another video. But okay, so it looks like that, but then you see them drinking in other instances. You see references in the Bible to drinking in other instances. You have the water being turned to wine at the wedding at Cana. So there are other things, but okay, so just for what it's worth, I thought I'd mention that. Now, 26. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death till he comes. Okay, so it's another way of proclaiming the gospel. Okay, 27, and this is almost there. So, therefore, whoever eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. Okay, so it doesn't have to be literal, it's symbolic. And if you're still doing it in an unworthy manner, you're still guilty because it's symbolizing something holy, and you're still guilty if you're doing this in an unworthy manner. Okay, so it was a serious thing, and they weren't taking it seriously. Okay, 28. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. So again, what it symbolizes and everything. And if people do that and they don't examine themselves, if they have unrepentant sin, that kind of thing, they'll be eating and drinking judgment on their own heads. Okay? And so, and when we partake of this, it unites us in one body as well, being his body. And so, again, that's why they get closed communion, because if one is in unrepentant sin, there's a danger that it could affect somebody else. I mean, I don't know. I've heard that, so I'm just putting that out there. Okay, 30. For this reason, many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. So some even died. Okay. It was serious. So that's what happened as a consequence. So this whole idea of a license to sin just doesn't hold water, and this is honoring the crucifixion right here. So again, his death on the cross is it saves us. It's not a license to sin. Okay, people who were still doing that, this is what they got as a consequence. Okay, some were weak, some were sick, and some even died. Okay, it's a serious thing. So don't take this in vain. All right, he died and rose again to deliver us from sin, as well as the penalty. But the power over sin in our life, we're given power and victory over that, and we need to walk in it. Okay, 31. For if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened by the Lord, that we may not be condemned with the world. Okay, so if we don't do this properly, he's going to have to do it. That's when the consequences come in, okay? And it's just to keep us from far worse consequences that could come later as a result, like so that we won't be condemned with the world, okay? So we're not to live like the world. Okay, 33. Therefore, my brethren, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. But if anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, lest you come together for judgment. And the rest I will set in order when I come. Okay, so that's it about that. Now, again, I'll do these three as a set, and I'm going to do that tomorrow. Okay, so that was a lot of just all kinds of assorted topics, and some of them a little bit dicey. People might not be used to that, but that's what it says, and so I have to go over it. Okay, so that's it. that's the end of this one, and you have a blessed rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow.